Carter. I'm an artist living and working in St. Louis, Missouri, in the middle of the United States. I paint in watercolor primarily now, but I did work in acrylic for 30 years prior to investing my time in watercolor. I got my MFA, my Master of Fine Arts, from Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri in 1984, which is a graduate degree in painting. And I have been teaching workshops around the country in watercolor for the last 15 to 20 years. I've also taught internationally on occasion watercolor, and it has exhibited nationally and internationally for the last 30 years. My earliest recollection for art was as a child. My mother was an artist, and she would encourage me in painting primarily, although I'm sure she would have encouraged me in all the creative arts. But since she was a visual artist, she encouraged me visually. She bought me real art supplies as a child, not the children art supplies. And I learned to work with the material safely by watching her. She further encouraged me by framing my works and putting them around the house, which gave me more confidence to explore visually and make more risks. So as a child, I grew up wanting to be an artist. It was the only thing I wanted to do. And when I made it to college, that was my major from the very first day. I went to the art department. I told them I wanted to be an artist and proceeded to study seriously art for 4 years, graduated, spent 5 years as a working artist before going back to graduate school and receiving my Master of Fine Arts in painting. And from the time of receiving my master's degree, I entered the professional world of art in St. Louis locally and have been painting and selling and exhibiting my work ever since. So I have been a professional artist my whole career, and am very, very blessed and grateful to be able to say that.
That your palette is very rich.
Well, I would say my color sense is influenced mostly by my childhood, where I grew up, which was in Florida. I didn't grow up in St. Louis. I just went to high school and college here, and then I married and built my life here. But for some reason, growing up in Florida, which is tropical and bright and colorful beyond belief, has influenced my painting and my color sense. So I believe that's where I get my rich tapestry of color from and incorporate it in my work. Now, St. Louis has given me a cultural background of enriching my life with city life and historical life and Midwestern life, which has deepened my sense of imagery, but my color is definitely from the tropics, definitely. Because St. Louis is a city, it's brick, and it's very subdued color. It is not brilliant color. I almost think if I had developed my career in Florida, my palette might be perhaps more subdued to not compete with the environment. But here, where my local environment is more quiet, my palette tends to be a counterbalance to that, be bright and cheery and welcoming, so that it's a counterbalance to the local environment.
After you did your Master's of Fine Arts, you started to travel and show your work internationally?
Not exactly in that order. After my MFA, I had a family. I had my son and I was married. So I pretty much stayed home locally to raise him, be a good mom, because that was the most important thing to me. My career was secondary. My being a good mom was primary. So I developed my career locally and regionally for 20 years. When he went off to college was about the time I launched my website and began to have a broader reach of my art to a wider audience, internationally and nationally. And that's when I began teaching more internationally. In the late 90s, I was invited to teach in Norway. And from then, it just led to more and more countries inviting me to teach. So I would say after 20, 25 years from my graduate experience, did I begin reaching a more global audience.
How did you stay in touch with
Well,
art?
I followed artists in town. I was part of a local art community. I had a studio downtown where there were a lot of artists located. It was in a warehouse building with several floors, up to 10 floors, with various artists on each floor. We would have open studios. Once a year, we had camaraderie. We would visit each other's studios. I did work in a gallery, so I had touch with the gallery artists there. And I guess that's pretty much it. Just staying in touch locally with my local art scene, various organizations and exhibitions and venues to show and share your work. I also taught locally at that time. I didn't travel out of state very much because of my son, but I would teach local organizations watercolor or acrylic technique and share experiences with local art and artists then. And also, we have a very strong museum here in St. Louis with a very big and expansive collection. And so going to the art museum 4 or 5 times a year and looking at the current exhibitions, both modern art and historical art, keeps you in touch with art. And of course, traveling regionally during those 2 decades to various cities to see what other cities are up to. And I would have shows in different cities, Chicago, LA, Florida, different towns in Florida. So that's another way to stay in touch with art. Important to stay in touch. Oh yes, I had a studio downtown the first 7 years of his life, but then when he was 7 or 8, we built a house and I had a studio at home for a number of years, 4 or 5 years. So he was around the creative process when he was out for summer and weekends and holidays. So yeah, he was very much exposed to art. He did not want to be an artist though. He was very creative, and his art teacher at school thought he should be an artist, but he was not drawn to do that. He was more drawn to be an actor, so we encouraged him to pursue that. And he got a minor in acting in college, but a major in business. And he pursued a little bit of acting after college as well, but now he's in the world of business. But yes, he was around art and artists his whole childhood. And he very much loves my art and the art process. And you know, I did paint a painting of him every year while he was growing up. So he's pretty involved with that too. He appreciates that. A number of years ago, they invited me to be a pivotal artist. I don't know what to say. One of their top 3 artists for this art festival they had in Toulouse. And as I recall, it was a juried art exhibition of local art, regional art of 700 artists. And I was one of 3 artists that was invited to be featured in this weekend of art exhibition and art demonstrations and art talks. Yes, that was a great time, a grand exhibition. I gave a workshop and a lecture, and I had a small exhibition of my work along with the juried exhibition. That was one of 3 trips I made to France back to back to back to teach during that period of time.
What attracts you to watercolor?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the simplest answer is when I was in undergrad, when I was in college, our painting program didn't really offer opaque mediums. They just offered watercolor. So for 4 years, the only medium that I worked in, as well as my fellow students, was watercolor. So we developed a huge affinity to watercolor. And upon graduating, I exhibited and showed my work and sold it. But when I went back to graduate school in my mid-20s, my professors there told me I couldn't have a serious career in a transparent medium. So they discouraged me from pursuing watercolor. So I gave up watercolor and I taught myself acrylic. And I became a proficient acrylic painter and developed most of my career being an opaque artist, opaque medium artist. But after 30 years, I always did watercolor on the side for those 30 years of working in acrylic, but it wasn't my primary medium. And after 30 years in 2012, I decided to focus primarily on watercolor and drop the acrylic because it was my first love, and I just wanted to spend a few serious decades pushing watercolor and making that my final and artistic statement. So what attracts me to watercolor is it's fluid, it's motion, it's transparent, it's fragile, it's elusive, and it is so much fun to work in. The actual process of painting watercolor is very hypnotic. It draws you into the painting method, and it makes you so happy to be painting and relaxed, even though you're striving and working and struggling in the method of making something work. The actual magic of watching watercolor is magical. So I just love to do it. I call it the narcotic of painting methods. It just attracts you to work in it. If you haven't tried it, you should. It's wonderful. Yes, I've always been a representational painter from the moment I got into graduate school and pretty much before. I tried to translate the realistic world in a representational way, but I don't describe it. I try to translate it and inform it with my vision of what I want my representation my representational art to say. I try to infuse it with autobiography or a story or a narrative or a journey in my work. But yes, I'm very much a representational painter, but not a realistic painter. And I have a lot more abstraction in my work as I continue to evolve in my painting. My work is getting much more loose and abstract as I continue to paint, but still representation, still a message.
I love the fact that you paint yourself.
Autobiographic, yep. I feel that I know myself more than anybody, and I like to describe what I'm going through at a certain moment in time in my evolution as a painter, as a woman, as an artist, as a mother. And so I like to paint my face or my physique going through that special moment in time so that it becomes a generic foil for what others may or may not be experiencing. I try to be true to myself and go within with what I'm experiencing so that I can be more universal in my message as to what others may be experiencing. I've painted mothering, I've painted grief, I've painted sorrow, I've painted joy, and various moments of happiness in my life, loss, as well as gain. And I try to make these emotions relate to other people so that they can find a similar point of reference in their own experience. So I try not to make it so much about me, but more about me experiencing the human condition, which is what everybody experiences. Yes, that is a recent thing. I have always loved animals, but I did not consider myself an animal artist. 2018, I decided to paint the horse for a whole year. So every week I decided to do one painting of a horse per week. So the title of the show was called 52 in 52. 52 horses in 52 weeks. So each week I did a different version of the horse to develop a real solid exploration of the horse imagery. I am not a horse person. I don't ride horses. I don't have horses. I don't necessarily like horses, but I do love the horse image and the horse metaphor. I think the horse as an animal is a strong metaphor for strength and life and mystery and evolution. And the horse has given us so much in terms of our evolution as human beings to tame the world. And since that horse exhibition, I've painted insects and cats, and now I'm working on an exhibition of dogs because of our love of dogs through the pandemic, adopting dogs to help us through this lockdown. And I've painted sea life and fish, all kinds of animals. It's a rich subject matter to explore, and I'm all about it. I love it. And I hope to paint more.
Emotions are very present in your art.
Mm-hmm. I feel that I'm an emotional person. I'm an emotional artist. I like to paint what I feel and feel what I paint. I like when others lock into the emotional message. And I think art is about communication. So I like to be able to access that emotional platform to express what's going on in my life or daily life or community life, like what's happening in the world or politically and so forth. So yes, I think emotions are strong in my work, definitely. Mm-hmm. Many artists. Let's see. Joseph Raphael, Eric Fischel, Jennifer Bartlett, Graham Dean, let's see, Patricia Tobacco Forrester, Anne Farley Gaines, Carolyn Lord, Robin Altman, Kim Minicello, Carrie Waller. These are all artists. Some are contemporary, some are not. They're all very fruitful and they all inspire me every day. I look at watercolor artists every day on Instagram and Facebook and follow along with their careers and am very inspired and blessed by all of them. They're very good. If I had known that you're going to ask that question, I would have had a list because there are many more than I haven't mentioned. It works well. You just have to be loose and forthright and dynamic and explosive and open yourself up to a lot of experimentation, a lot of mixed medias in the work. You can use a lot of other mediums in watercolor. You can use a lot of different watercolor surfaces. Instead of just paper, you can use a clayboard edge or a gessoed edge surface of paper. So yes, it works just fine. In fact, many years prior to graduate school, I did just abstract work in watercolor using collage, tissued watercolor, tissued paper, magazines, different things collaged on, pencil, crayon d'arche, pencil, pastel, all kinds of mediums you can use with watercolor besides just the watercolor medium to build up the surface. Absolutely. It's very nice medium. It goes very abstract and very hyper realistic, as well as middle of the road, which is what I try to strike. Some representation, but a lot of abstraction, a lot of looseness.
How do you find that today's generation, they understand watercolor?
Well, I'm kind of removed from how a young person may or may not learn, but I think it's digitally a lot, so it's two-dimensionally. So I hope they're getting in-person instruction as well as instruction online or with video tutorials or online tutorials, because a lot of nuance of painting is picked up when you see it in person. So I highly hope and encourage young artists to sit at the hand and the elbow of working artists so that they can actually see how the paint is manipulated from the palette and the brush and the water to the paper. Because there's a finesse that you have to observe very close. So my hope is that they're getting that as instruction, as well as all the expansive narrative of online tutorials and YouTube tutorials and video conferencing and Zoom teaching that are bringing artists from all over the world into this digital format. But although it's rich and powerful, I think unique instruction in person is also necessary. So my hope is that they have that too, the young person. Because when I grew up as a young artist, that is the only way we learned. We did not get the digital format till 15, 20 years ago. So we learned the old-fashioned way. And I'm not saying old-fashioned is best. I'm just saying you do need some hand-to-hand combat, some in-person instruction as well. So when the pandemic is over, we can all unite and do that for each other.
Do you do plein air?
I do not anymore. I was 7 years as a plein air artist in college and 3 years after college. I painted all over Europe with a palette and a tablet on my lap and a stool, but I do not do plein air anymore. It is a skill that you have to develop and keep, and unfortunately I did not do that. So I do not teach or paint plein air. When I paint a location, I generally visit that location, photograph it, come back to the studio, and translate the photograph into a painting. So that's how my paintings from a different location happen in the studio. I no longer paint on location. I wish I could, but I can't and don't. I did nudes a lot in the mid-90s. I did a whole suite of black and white nudes from 1995 to 1997. I do nudes off and on ever since, and I did in 2006, I did a whole exhibition of nudes in the swimming pool environment. But as much as I love doing the nudes do not sell readily, so I don't have them as a big part of my output because I need to generate income with the work that I create on an ongoing basis because I'm a self-supportive artist. So I do nudes on occasion when I feel compelled to paint that, but I don't do them all the time and they're not an exclusive subject for me, but I love painting them. And I have done a number of beautiful exhibitions of nudes. in the past that have critically and financially done well. I'm not saying they don't sell or they don't generate income, but as an ongoing portfolio, I don't do them exclusively and will not probably do them exclusively. My work has been used in that capacity in the past, but the lead or the need generally comes to me. It's generated elsewhere, and my work is invited to be in that context. I do have a print broker, which is a woman who does prints of my work and mass produces prints for a specific audience. And so she sells the rights to my work to fit a number of different places, whether it's a furniture store or another kind of shop in a different shop, bathroom fixtures or kitchen fixtures and so forth. So yes, my work has been used on a number of occasions for that. And also prior to 2000, the year 2000, I did a lot of commercial work in that way. I did a lot of specific graphic work for different wine bottles or household products that needed a watercolor illustration on demand. But I am not by any means a commercial artist because I don't have those skills. I wish I did, but I didn't develop those skills. I developed the fine art skill. So when my work is put into a more commercial context, it's usually a fine art piece that is placed in that commercial context, and then that commercial artist adapts the piece to that venue. I don't really have those skills. Yes, I did a whole series of paintings on the Everglades, which is a national park in the state of Florida. It's all about the tropics and the marshes and the underground river. The Everglades portfolio is no longer on my website, but it's a series of work that I did in the early, in 2010 through 2015, and it's all natural landscapes and waterscapes, but it's not on my website right now. It was earlier until I rebooted my website with a new design, which is more current work. But yeah, I've done a lot of nature. I painted a whole suite of work on France. I've done work on Hong Kong, work on Belglade, which is a small town in Florida in the mid-90s. I did a 5-year body of work, which is all natural landscape of the farmland and the sugar farming in Belglade, Florida. But those are all portfolios that are 20 years old, so they're not on my website. today. Just the last 5-6 years is on the website today. This year, I am working on 2 exhibitions. One is bovines, which are cows, cattle, camels, bulls. So it's going to be more farm-like animals. And I'm also working on a smaller exhibition called the Puppy Project, and that is small, tiny watercolors of people's puppies, photographs of people's puppies, dogs that they've sent to me online that have helped them through the pandemic. And that is a smaller, more delightful body of work that I'll be sharing in December. And the bovine project, the bovine exhibition, I don't really have a destination for yet. I am working on one other suite of work that I began prior to the lockdown in 2020. And that was an exhibition called Threads. And I was painting portraits of immigrants that have come to the United States from various countries across the world that have made the United States their home and become US citizens. And I've done about 20 portraits for that body of work. But I had to quit it when the pandemic happened because people didn't want to come and pose for me. But now that we're beginning to loosen up here in the United States, I will begin to work again on that project and bring that one to conclusion. So I think I'm working on 3 projects at once this year. So Threads, bovines, and the Puppy Project. I have very limited gallery representation by choice. I'm totally self-represented locally. And in 1997, so that's how many years ago? 20-something years ago, I decided to self-represent my work when I launched my website. And I have been able to make a nice living, a successful living, and a promising career by learning how to market my work, managing my deadlines and my exhibitions and my output and my inventory. And I did not come to this naturally. I had to learn how to be a businesswoman. I had to learn how to run my career and manage my art in the business world and professionally. But I love it. And the tools today for young artists are exponential compared to what I had 20-something years ago. I just barely keep up with the technology now. In fact, I don't keep up, but I do my best to do what I can to stay current. But the young artists today launching their career is so lucky to have the digital tools and the knowledge of how to run them at their fingertip, to have a great and promising career. You all have everything. You know, we didn't have that for the first 20 years of my career. Then we got it, so we're just keeping up, we meaning the older artists. But you younger artists are learning both your fine art skill and your business skills and digital skills all at the same time. So you're going to have this great blending of careers as you move forward in your work. And I totally think being self-represented with Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest and all the YouTube tutorials, all of the things online to help you have a steady and current career, you will be more than fine in creating momentum in your work. More than fine. I've done it, and I'm sure you'll have no problem. And I totally believe that.
Do you feel there's a generational gap or generational divide when it comes to
I don't know when it comes to art, but I do think when it comes to digital skills, yes, I believe I personally am on the wrong side of the digital divide. I believe my son's generation, he's a bit older than your son. My son is 35. When my son was growing up, right away, he started getting digital skills. And I started, dovetailing him. But of course, his skills far outstrip me. But I'm just saying, I feel like I'm on the last side of the digital divide. I do have some skills. I'm not illiterate, but yes, I do believe there is a divide when it comes to that between the older artists and the younger artists, unless the older artists seriously study to do more than I personally have done to keep in touch. Now, in terms of art, I don't know. Fine art, I can't say. I love what young artists are doing. I think differently than they do. I'm older. I'm a much older artist than they are. I think it's the blessing of aging of generations. When one generation moves forward in their time frame, they mature and they get wise, and they put their wisdom and their maturity in their work, and they pass down their heritage to the younger generation. And the younger generation takes that knowledge and twists it and torques it and makes it into a new message and blends it into a new vision. And then they grow up with it, and then they grow older and mature and pass it down again. So it's just a question of blending, aging, maturing, and then sharing and giving it to the younger generation. So I'm right in the middle of that right now, of seeing how, as an older artist, how the younger artists are making it their own vision now. And I appreciate that. It's great. That's how art moves forward. We don't want it to stay stagnant. We want it to change. Paint what you love and love what you paint. And I tell that to my students. If you don't love what you're painting, you can guarantee your audience is not going to like what they're looking at. So you must fall in love with your image that you're painting, your content, your message, and you must also love how you're painting it and the way you're painting it and the medium you're painting it in. Because that is what's going to keep you there and keep you trying. So my philosophy of art is to communicate what you love and to love what you communicate. And if your message is important and if it's true to you, it will come through and engage your audience and resonate and be profound. So that's my philosophy. I would just like to add that I think it's wonderful that artists like yourself from across the world are able to reach out and touch an artist such as myself and find common ground to share about the creative process. We all are in this world together. We all love art. We all love to create. It is our common humanity to express and to be heard. And so I'm just so grateful that you reached out to me and I was able to connect back with you, and that your blog and your message and your following, it just is like a rock in a pool of water. The ripples go out and out and out and out. So one ripple makes another ripple, makes another ripple. So you threw a little rock towards me, and I threw it back towards you, and the ripple keeps going out in communication. So that's, thank you very much for including me. I really appreciate it. And I hope to meet you someday. when the pandemic is over, I promise to get to France. I have many friends in France, and I love France. I just adore it. So if I do, I will certainly look you up, and we will have a croissant and a cafe, right?